The maitre d' barely looked up when André Walker stepped through the polished glass doors of La Meridienne, the most exclusive French restaurant in the city. Dressed in a crisp charcoal suit, freshly shined shoes, and wearing a minimalist watch that cost more than most rent checks, André approached the host's stand with quiet confidence. The lobby was hushed, white tablecloths, soft jazz, clinking silverware. Every seat filled with well-dressed patrons. Every waiter moved with precision. And yet, as André stood patiently, no one acknowledged him. The maitre d' continued to scribble in a leather-bound book, glancing over André like he was invisible. "Excuse me," André said politely. "Reservation for Walker. 7 p.m. Still no eye contact. A pause. Then a flat response, "We're fully booked tonight." André tilted his head. "There must be a mistake. I received confirmation this morning." Another waiter, clearing glasses nearby, gave him a once-over. Not a glance of respect, but of quiet dismissal. The kind of look André had seen more times than he could count. The maitre d' sighed. "Perhaps you'd be more comfortable somewhere else, sir." André said nothing. He didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. Instead, he calmly reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. He tapped once. Then put it away. And waited. At a nearby table, a white couple paused mid-bite, watching the scene unfold. The woman leaned over to whisper, "Why is he even here?" The man smirked. "Lost, maybe." André heard them. He always did. But he stood tall, unbothered. And then, a shift in the air. From the back of the restaurant, a door swung open. Out walked a man in a tailored navy suit, head shaved, eyes sharp, Jean Delacroix, the owner of La Meridienne himself. The maitre d's face paled. Jean's eyes locked on André. And then, with a warm smile, he extended his hand. "Mr. Walker, what an honor. Your table is waiting." The moment Jean Delacroix extended his hand to André, the room seemed to hold its breath. Silverware paused mid-air, murmured conversations trailed off, and even the maitre d' seemed unsure whether to speak or disappear. André shook Jean's hand firmly, his expression calm but unreadable. The warmth in Jean's voice was unmistakable, not performative, but personal, grounded in genuine respect. "I've been waiting for this dinner," Jean said. "I'm glad you made time." With a quick turn, Jean looked at the stunned maitre d'. "Is there a problem?" The man stammered something about overbookings and confusion, but Jean raised one hand. "No. His table is already set." Jean himself guided André through the restaurant, past tables of patrons who suddenly found their plates less interesting. André followed silently, aware of the sudden shift in posture around him, the waiter who now made eye contact, the staff who nodded politely, the subtle but unmistakable scramble to appear gracious. They reached a secluded corner table by the window, elegantly set for two, with a view of the river glowing under soft city lights. André took his seat, unhurried. Jean nodded to a nearby sommelier who rushed over, already presenting a menu of rare Bordeaux. The same waiter who had earlier ignored André now approached, shoulders tense, holding a leather-bound menu with slightly trembling hands. "Good evening, sir," he said quickly, placing the menu down with exaggerated politeness. "My name is Thomas. I'll be your..." André didn't look up. Jean glanced at Thomas, then said flatly, "I'll be personally handling Mr. Walker's service this evening." Thomas froze for a beat, then stepped back and vanished into the kitchen. Jean sat down across from André, loosening the button on his jacket. "I'm sorry you had to experience that," he said. "It's not the kind of welcome we offer our guests." André's voice was calm. "It's not the first time. Probably not the last. But it's telling." Jean sighed, then leaned forward. "People here don't realize you're not just a guest. You're the reason we're still open. That investment last quarter, your advice, your connections, it saved us. If it weren't for you, this building would have had a for lease sign in the window." André looked out the window, then back to Jean. "I didn't invest for the recognition." A pause. "I just wanted to see something different grow." Jean nodded, quiet for a moment. "Well, tonight, they'll see you. All of them." He raised a hand, and a waiter reappeared, this time with perfect posture and no trace of the earlier indifference. The night continued, but the tone had changed. André wasn't just seen. He was respected. And for once, the silence in the room wasn't about dismissal, it was reverence. The murmurs began the moment André and Jean sat down. At first, they were subtle, the tilt of a head, a lowered whisper, the quick swipe of a phone under the table. Most guests in La Meridienne that evening were regulars, people who prided themselves on being in the know. But none of them had known who Andre Walker was when he walked through those doors. Now, as Jean Delacroix, the famously aloof owner, sat across from him, speaking with the familiarity reserved only for longtime confidants or powerful partners, people were beginning to piece things together. A woman near the center table leaned toward her husband, phone in hand, screen aglow with a Google search. She mouthed silently, Andre Walker, venture capitalist. Her husband blinked. Wait. The Andre Walker? He looked back at the corner table, at the man they had watched be dismissed just minutes earlier. The story spread like perfume. People remembered a tech acquisition last year that had sent waves through the industry. Andre Walker's name had been on the board. Others recalled interviews, rare ones, where he spoke not just about money but about equity, education, and generational change. Some remembered headlines about how he'd grown up in public housing and put himself through MIT. Now, seated in that restaurant corner, he was no longer the black man standing alone at the front. He had become the most powerful man in the room, and everyone knew it. The tension among the staff was thick. In the kitchen, the maitre d' paced near the espresso machine, muttering apologies no one could hear. The waiter, Thomas, stood frozen by the wine rack, eyes down, as if hoping the marble floor might crack open and swallow him whole. Back at the table, Andre and Jean weren't speaking loudly, but they didn't have to. Their presence alone was louder than any toast. Jean leaned in, laughing softly at something Andre had said, and the sound of it, effortless, genuine, sent another wave through the diners. At one point, a junior manager emerged from the back and whispered something in the maitre d's ear. Whatever was said made him pale further and vanish into the office. Andre hadn't touched his phone since he arrived. He hadn't needed to. His calm demeanor, his unshakable posture, spoke volumes. He wasn't interested in revenge or spectacle. He was there for dinner. And yet, by simply existing, by taking up space with quiet dignity, he was forcing everyone in the room to reckon with what they'd seen, and what they hadn't. As the second course arrived, duck confit with blackberry reduction, Jean stood up briefly to speak with the sommelier. In that brief moment, Andre glanced around the room. Eyes darted away. Napkins were refolded. Conversations resumed with artificial energy. But one young couple across the room didn't look away. A black man in his late 20s sat with a woman beside him, both of them clearly overdressed compared to the surrounding diners. When their eyes met, the man gave Andre a small nod, not of recognition as a celebrity, but as someone who understood exactly what had just happened. Andre returned the nod. It was the smallest thing in the world. And it meant everything. By the time the main course arrived, the staff at La Meridienne had undergone a full transformation. Every server on the floor now moved with extra care and cautious grace, like dancers trying not to step out of rhythm. The maitre d', once self-assured and dismissive, had now taken on the role of invisible shadow, checking on every table but avoiding one, the one where Andre Walker sat. It was clear to everyone in the room that something significant had shifted, and no one wanted to be the next person called out for getting it wrong. But Andre hadn't said a word about the incident. He hadn't raised his voice or demanded explanations. That was the most unsettling part for the staff, the absence of anger, the absence of any need to perform his discomfort. He simply dined. With poise. With grace. And with power that spoke through silence. Jean returned to the table just as a senior waiter brought out the filet with truffle glaze and asparagus foam. He leaned over to refill Andre's glass personally, though it was barely half empty. Please, Jean said, if anything is off, say the word. Tonight should be seamless. Andre smiled politely. So far, it's excellent, he said. But Jean, I hope you know that perfection tonight doesn't erase the welcome I received. Jean's face tightened. It shouldn't, he replied quietly. And it won't. For a brief moment, Andre placed his silverware down. His tone was still soft, but his eyes held a rare intensity. You know what bothered me the most? He asked. Jean shook his head. It wasn't that I was dismissed. I've had that happen more times than I can count. It was how easy it was. How reflexive. No one even thought about it. They just saw a black man in a suit and decided he didn't belong. Jean didn't interrupt. He just listened. If I hadn't texted you, I would have walked out, and no one here would have lost a minute of sleep over it. The staff would have patted themselves on the back for protecting the ambience, and never realized who they turned away. Jean exhaled slowly. What can I do to make it right? Andre looked around the room, then back at Jean. Don't center me. Center your culture. Train them. Teach them not just how to pour wine, but how to see people. He leaned back in his chair. And don't do it because I'm an investor. Do it because the next man who walks in looking like me might not be. He might be a student. A teacher. A father. And he deserves respect, whether he owns a tech firm or not. Gene nodded solemnly. It's already in motion, he said. Starting tomorrow, every staff member is going through implicit bias training. The maitre d' won't be returning. I've spoken to Thomas privately. And I'll be making a public statement to the board. Andre picked up his fork again. Good, he said simply. Then let's eat. The rest of the dinner unfolded peacefully, each course prepared to perfection, but it was no longer about the food. The tension had shifted into resolve. The restaurant had been forced to see itself in a mirror it hadn't asked for. And Andre, without shouting, without spectacle, had made sure it couldn't look away. As the plates from the main course were cleared, Andre leaned back slightly, sipping the last of his Bordeaux, his gaze resting out the window. The river glimmered under the evening sky, and a cool calm had returned to the restaurant. Gene had excused himself briefly to check on the kitchen, leaving Andre alone for the first time since the ordeal at the door. It wasn't loneliness he felt, it was reflection. Moments like this didn't surprise him anymore. But that didn't mean they hurt any less. A quiet voice interrupted his thoughts. Excuse me, sir. May I? Andre turned. It was the young black man from across the room, the one who had nodded to him earlier. He looked nervous but determined, standing beside the table with his hands clasped in front of him. Andre gave a nod. Of course. The man pulled out the opposite chair and sat down slowly. I just wanted to say. Thank you, he said. I saw everything that happened. From the second you walked in. And the way you handled it. That meant a lot. Andre studied him for a moment. The man looked to be in his late 20s, maybe early 30s. Smartly dressed in a blazer that fit just a little too snug, like it had been borrowed or saved for special occasions. He carried himself with careful confidence, the kind built in pieces, not handed down. What's your name? Andre asked. Malik, the man said. Malik Harrison. I'm here with my wife, it's our anniversary. We almost didn't come. Thought maybe this place wasn't for us. He let out a small laugh. Guess we weren't wrong to worry. Andre tilted his head. You belong wherever you want to be, Malik. Never forget that. The moment you start waiting for permission, you start giving away your place. Malik nodded slowly, absorbing every word. I've been trying to start a company, he said quietly. Education tech. Not flashy. Just something that helps inner-city schools connect with mentors. I've been building it nights and weekends, while working retail to pay the bills. Most people don't take me seriously. Tonight reminded me why I started. Andre's expression shifted. He leaned forward, intrigued. Tell me more about it. Malik blinked. You want to hear about it? Andre smiled. You have 10 minutes before dessert. Convince me it matters. Malik's nerves gave way to something stronger, passion. He spoke with urgency, explaining his idea, his prototype, the outreach he'd already done with schools in underserved communities. He didn't pitch it like a businessman, he told it like someone who had lived the problem and couldn't rest until it was solved. When Malik finished, Andre sat back again, thoughtful. You know how many people come up to me with business cards and elevator pitches? He said. Malik looked unsure. A lot? Too many, Andre said. But not many have something that comes from here. He tapped his chest lightly. Most chase money. You're chasing meaning. That's the kind of work that lasts. Malik's eyes lit up. Does that mean? Andre held up a hand, smiling. It means I'll give you a real meeting. Not here. Not now. But my assistant will set something up this week. We'll see what you've got. Malik sat there stunned, and for a long moment, he said nothing. Then he stood, offered his hand. Thank you, he said, his voice thick. Really? Thank you. Andre shook it firmly. Don't thank me yet. Do the work. Show me I was right to listen. As Malik returned to his table, visibly shaken but smiling, Gene returned with a fresh bottle of wine. Who was that? He asked. Andre replied, almost offhandedly, maybe someone worth watching. And somewhere in the quiet clink of new glasses being poured and the hush of linen napkins being refolded, a new story had begun, not just of one man reclaiming his place, but of another discovering it for the first time. The soft hum of conversation returned to La Meridienne, but something had shifted beneath the surface, an unspoken current running through every guest and member of the staff. The tension that had once blanketed the room was replaced now by something else entirely, anticipation. People were no longer eating absent-mindedly or chatting about vacations. They were watching. Listening. Waiting to see what would happen next. Jean Delacroix sensed it too. As he returned to Andre's table and set down two delicate crystal glasses of dessert wine, his movements were slow and deliberate, like someone preparing a stage before a final act. "There's something I'd like to do," he said, not sitting yet. Andre looked up. "You don't need to make a scene." Jean shook his head. "It's not about you. Not only. It's about this place. And what it says about who we are." Without waiting for permission, Jean stepped to the center of the room. The piano player, sensing a shift, gently lifted his hands from the keys, letting silence fill the space. Jean cleared his throat, but his voice carried with practiced authority. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I may have your attention for a moment." Heads turned. Forks were set down. Even the staff froze in place. Many of you know La Meridienne as a place of elegance. Of exclusivity. Of tradition. He paused, then glanced toward Andre's table. But tonight, I was reminded that tradition, if left unexamined, can easily become prejudice. A quiet ripple moved through the room. Jean continued, "Earlier this evening, a guest, a valued guest, was ignored at our entrance. Not because of his reservation status. Not because of our capacity. But because of an assumption. One based solely on appearance." Jean's voice never rose, but each word hit with precision. "I take full responsibility for that. Because I built this place. I trained this staff. I set the tone. And if that tone allowed someone like Mr. Andre Walker to be treated as less than what he is, then I have failed." Now, the silence was heavier. No one touched their drinks. All eyes were on Jean. Mr. Walker is not only a respected investor and visionary. He's a man of dignity, patience, and extraordinary restraint. Tonight, he showed us what real power looks like. Not in loud demands or public shaming, but in calm presence, in unwavering self-worth. Jean turned back to Andre, who sat quietly, his face unreadable. "On behalf of myself, my staff, and this institution, I offer not only an apology, but a promise. A promise that this will not be forgotten. That tonight will mark a change in how we serve, how we see, and how we grow." There was no applause. No polite clapping. Just a rare, heavy pause, the kind that comes when people are made to sit with truth. Jean nodded once, then returned to the table, sitting down slowly. Andre finally spoke. "That wasn't for me," he said. Jean met his eyes. "No. It wasn't. It was overdue." Andre took a sip of wine. "Good. Then maybe now, we can finish dessert." And just like that, the moment passed, not with grand drama, but with quiet resolve. The restaurant resumed its rhythm, though nothing about the evening would be remembered as ordinary. Patrons would leave with more than just a meal. They'd leave with a story. A reminder. A reckoning. By the time the bill arrived, quietly waved by Jean, though Andre pretended not to notice, the air inside La Meridienne felt different. Softer. Clearer. Not just because of Jean's speech, or Malik's unexpected conversation, but because of the silence that followed, and how it held. This wasn't the kind of night people would forget. It had begun with a door left closed, but it was ending with something wide open. Andre stood slowly, buttoning his blazer with a practiced grace. Around the room, eyes followed him, not out of pity, and not out of awe, but out of respect. Not one person moved to stop him as he made his way toward the exit. The maitre d's desk was conspicuously empty. The waiter who had once ignored him now stood near the wine station, stiff with guilt. Andre didn't need to say anything. His walk said it all. But just as he reached the grand glass doors, Jean caught up to him, slightly breathless. "Before you go," he said, "I wanted to ask you something off the record." Andre raised an eyebrow, amused. "Off the record? I didn't realize we were being recorded." Jean smiled faintly. "Do you ever think about owning a place like this?" Andre paused. "Why?" Jean looked around the empty lobby, his voice lower now. "Because I've built something beautiful here. But tonight showed me I'm not the man to carry it into the future. I've been thinking about stepping away. Quietly. But if I knew someone like you were involved, someone who sees the cracks I missed, I could walk away knowing this place might actually become what it was always supposed to be." Andre didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked out the glass doors at the night beyond, the city pulsing quietly, endless in possibility. Then he turned back, his tone even. "Call me in the morning. If you're serious, we'll talk numbers. If you're not, I'll still be glad I came." Jean blinked. "You'd actually consider it?" Andre gave a small shrug. "Why not? Maybe it's time this city had a restaurant where elegance and equity sit at the same table." With that, he pushed the door open and stepped into the night. The valet rushed forward with his keys, but Andre waved him off. He wanted to walk. As he moved down the sidewalk, his mind wasn't on the incident anymore, not on the waiter, or the apology, or even the speech. It was on the quiet conversation with Malik, the nod from the young couple, the ripple that had started in a single room and might now reach farther than he thought. And back inside the restaurant, Jean stood watching him go, alone in the doorway. For once, the face of La Meridienne wasn't the owner in the pressed suit, or the hostess with the perfect smile. It was the man who'd been told he didn't belong, and who, with steady grace, had redefined the entire meaning of belonging.